Welcome to AZ Central's election show, where we bring you inside the newsroom to talk about the issues affecting the 2018 election cycle. In this episode, we'll talk about money in politics. How much is really being spent and who is behind it? First, we'll get you up to speed on all the money and the groups that are involved this cycle. Then, reporter Richard Ruella sits down with former Attorney General Terry Goddard and Republican consultant Sean Noble, who will share differing views on whether or not these groups actually need to disclose who they are. And lastly, our team of reporters will break down what you've learned. Let's get started.
Tonight, we continue to keep our eye on the intersection of money and politics.
A lot of people complain about all the money in politics.
Outside money.
Big money donors.
What does this mean?
I think what we're really seeing is a fundamental rewiring of how political money is being raised at a national level.
Running a political campaign isn't easy or cheap, and it's gotten more expensive over time. To be competitive, candidates and their campaigns must get their message in front of voters, and that can mean sending mailers, buying signs, and running print, television, and digital ads. And all those expenses add up. So, how do campaigns pay for all those things? Political contributions. Here's how that works. For candidates at the federal level, individuals can donate up to $2,700 per candidate per election. Individual donations can help fill a campaign's coffers no matter how small the donation. But spending on political causes doesn't stop with campaigns. Other groups can reach out to voters to help try and sway their votes. One kind of group, called Political Action Committees, or a PAC, can contribute up to $5,000 to candidates each year. PACs make contributions on behalf of others. And PACs have been around for a long time, since the 1940s. Since Citizens United, new groups called super PACs have sprung up. Super PACs can be started by corporations, unions, and other groups. Unlike PACs, however, super PACs cannot contribute directly to a campaign. So, what makes them so super? Well, their spending on advocacy for candidates or issues isn't capped, and neither is how much money they can raise. Campaigns, PACs, and super PACs must disclose their donors to the Federal Election Commission. The FEC polices the system, and if you want to know who's donating to a candidate or a cause, you can check out FEC filings online. But not all contributors to political speech or causes are public. You've probably heard the phrase dark money recently. Dark money refers to political spending that comes from organizations that don't have to disclose their donors. Those groups are nonprofits that, similar to super PACs, can raise unlimited amounts of money. For dark money groups have come under a lot of scrutiny lately. Critics of dark money say that donors should be identified because voters deserve to know who's behind the messages. Supporters of the groups say the anonymous nature of the donors helps protect donors, meaning individuals, corporations, or other groups, from retaliation by those who may disagree with their political views. During the 2016 election cycle, more than $6.5 billion was spent on presidential and congressional elections combined, and many Americans are concerned with the influx of money in politics. A Pew Research poll in May found that 77% of Americans support limits on political spending. Only 20% of Americans say groups should be able to spend unlimited amounts. Proponents of political spending say that more money equals more speech, which helps educate the public on issues and candidates. Advocates against unlimited money in politics say the money can compromise the integrity of candidates and elections and could lead to preferential treatment for large donors over ordinary citizens. No matter which side of this argument you're on, you won't be insulated from the bombardment of political speech hitting the airwaves this election cycle.
I have a super PAC, Colbert Super PAC.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, the difference between a PAC and a super PAC is a cover letter. Because I formed a PAC, but a PAC can only take so much money and it can only spend so much money. And I wanted to spend unlimited amounts of money and receive, more importantly, unlimited amounts of money.
I'm Richard Rellis, reporter with the Arizona Republic here in the AZ Central newsroom, with two gentlemen who know money and politics. Sean Noble, former Chief of Staff to Congressman John Shadegg; Terry Goddard, former Attorney General of Arizona and the Outlaw for Dirty Money campaign, which will not be on the November ballot. Let's talk about money and politics. You've been on the inside. Do people come to people like a congressman once in office, reminding them of the money they donated? Why do people donate to campaigns?
Well, they donate to campaigns because they believe in what the people are aspiring to, or the policies that they're running on. It's rare that I've ever seen anyone come back to a congressman or a senator and say, hey, I gave you money and I want you to vote a certain way. Most of the time people give because they are philosophically aligned with the politician that they're giving to.
I heard a chuckle next to you.
Yeah.
Terry, what has been your experience
I agree with Sean to an extent. I think most contributors do it because they believe in the cause and the candidate, and they don't expect anything in return except good government. But there are some major contributors, and I put both sides of the spectrum on the table: Soros and Koch and any others that sort of derive from those different trees, who put millions of dollars into political activities.
And what are they looking for?
They expect something. They expect to win. They expect to have gratitude. They expect to have some control over public policy. And so I think there's a big difference between the major contributors and you and me, who are not so big.
Well, you were known as sort of the Koch brothers. I don't know what the official title would have been, but the Koch brothers guy who sort of pushed money around. What were they attempting to do? What did you think your job was supposed to be?
They were trying to implement good public policy. I mean, one of the people who is one of the biggest patriots I know in this country is Charles Koch, because he has a real specific view of government, that is, less government is better. And he supported policies and politicians that espouse that ideology.
Was the good government motive also aligned with a profit motive for him or his companies?
In fact, it actually wasn't. There's many cases in which the Koch brothers would be involved in issues that were actually against their bottom line. For example, they supported the Keystone Pipeline because of the free market aspect of it, but that would have cut into their competition. So it was from a business standpoint, it was counter to their interest. But because it was about good public policy, they were for it.
How can we know that someone is donating? I mean, if donations are considered speech and a way to express yourself politically, how can we know that someone is acting in their own selfish profit interest or not acting for a motive of good government? Why is it hard to believe?
The first step is we need to know who is acting. And Charles Koch and others in his area, I mean, he's got a fairly large network that he has gathered over the years that have similar objectives. They don't like anybody to know who it is that's giving the contribution. They want to remain dark. They want to remain secret. And I think that's one of the serious problems that we're trying to deal with here in Arizona and around the country, is you need to know who it is that's saying something, and maybe their motives are completely pure and you agree. Maybe their motives are highly self-interested, but you need to know who it is so you can determine those motives.
But there's a level of anonymity that's always, I mean, the history of the country has some anonymous writings and people expressing themselves anonymously, and there's a fear that people take retribution if they know that someone has a particular political view.
You know, the principal proponent of full disclosure is a guy named Anthony Scalia. On the Supreme Court, a very strong conservative, but he basically believed that a robust debate where you know who the players are is critical to our democracy, and he wrote frequently about that.
What is the reason for the anonymity?
It's absolutely essential that we know who is saying something if it's trying to influence our vote.
But the point is that the reason we have a First Amendment is to protect people's political views and political speech from an overactive government. I mean, and the Obama administration was a perfect example of why we needed to protect the First Amendment and allow people to participate in the political process in an anonymous way.
Because of what did the Obama administration do?
The IRS was targeting individuals and organizations based on their political philosophy. I mean, it was just when you think about the most powerful revenue department in the world is able to target you as an individual because of your political belief, that's exactly why the founders put freedom of speech in the First Amendment.
So you just put the whole population into two categories. You've got the smaller contributors who in Arizona law and across the country have to disclose their name, address, and employer. Everybody who gives over $50 in the state of Arizona has to make that disclosure. But if you're David Koch and you're able to put millions, tens of millions of dollars into play in the political context, you're saying you don't have to disclose because somebody might harass you.
Because
I think that's really a bizarre
no,
thought.
because David Koch, if he gave to a candidate in Arizona, would have to disclose that.
Well, yes, he would, but he doesn't give to candidates. He runs his own campaign.
Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing that
disclose.
candidate contributions are disclosed? Or would you want more, less transparency in how even campaigns are funded?
I believe that anonymity is an important construct of the First Amendment. And if there are people who want to participate in the process without being with fear of retribution by the government or an active protest left, that they should be able to do that. I mean,
And I guess secret, dark money, dirty money, secret money aside, is there just too much money in the political process?
Actually, I don't think there's too much. When we, advertising for toothpaste in the United States swamps the amount of money that's spent on political advertising. I actually don't think there's enough, because we don't have enough of a political debate in this country. When you look at how few people actually participate in the political process, you have decisions being made by a very small minority of people. And so if we got more money into the system and had more robust debate and had more opportunity for people to be a part of that, I think that would be a good thing. I'm all about trying to get more people involved in the political process.
And you've been
I
the
hear
subject of...
every day from people who say, I'm not participating because the deck is stacked against me. I see an ad on TV and I don't know who paid for it. I have no idea. It's some nonsense.
Oh, sure. Oh, but do you agree with the notion that the advertising and the discussion we see helps the political process?
No, I don't think it does, but it would help the process more if we could actually evaluate who it is that's paying for the advertisement. Today, for over half of the non-candidate ads in Arizona in the last political cycle were paid for anonymously. That's ridiculous. In order to evaluate a statement, we need to know who made it. That's fundamental to anybody who's a witness in court. It's fundamental to the public.
The statement itself stands on its own.
We know that money's going to be a big part of this cycle, and we'll just see how the money flows, and we'll see what happens through November. Sean Noble, Terry Goddard, thanks for joining us.
Nice to know who's doing this thing. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We've heard the arguments for and against unlimited amounts of spending and a lot of spending in politics. Michael, you've looked at these numbers for years and we've gone over them ad nauseum in prior elections. Why do you think we're seeing such record numbers this year?
I think part of it is the money doesn't go as far as buying advertising. You think of your TV audience, it's more diffuse. People are watching Netflix. They're not seeing the ads there. They have to buy on websites and print and television. So I think that's part of what you're seeing.
The Governors Association, the Republican Governors Association, has sunk about $10 million into this race, and we're just entering the general election. Who are these people and what do they want for their money?
Yeah, they've committed, I think, over $9 million, with some of that is reserving time, ad time. But yeah, they started very early, helping to fund attack ads against David Garcia. Obviously, they're hoping to prop up and boost Doug Ducey in this race as we head toward November. I assume hoping that he continues with his message of deregulation, supporting corporate players, that sort of thing.
And these are major corporations. These are like the pharmaceutical companies. These are, Vegas interests. I mean, these clearly are people who have an agenda and probably want to, in some way, affect their bottom line, much like APS. And, what are we seeing this year and how does that compare to prior years?
So far, we haven't seen any spending from APS. They do have an account. They have a PAC ready. I think it's a safe bet that they're going to support Republican candidates for the Corporation Commission. There's 2 seats on that regulatory board up this year. The Republican candidates are Justin Olson and Rodney Glassman. The Democrats are Sandra Kennedy, who has sort of been at odds with APS over the years, so I don't think it's would be unexpected that they would spend some money against her. The other Democrat in the race is relatively unknown, and it'll be interesting to see if APS bothers advertising against her or sort of leaves her alone and just tries to get Kennedy out.
You got a first-hand glimpse into how APS is viewing these candidates. You were going through some paperwork. Tell us about what their takeaways were on this election.
Well, it was pretty interesting because we've asked APS who they might support, and they declined to answer. They directed us to their PAC. We asked the PAC during the primary, and they wouldn't say anything. But apparently, when Bank of America's analyst asked Pinnacle West who they liked, Pinnacle West answered them, and they saw a threat if both the incumbents lost their re-election, and one of the incumbents, Tom Farese, did lose. And oddly, and most interestingly, is that Pinnacle West apparently told Bank of America that Kiana Sears, this relatively unknown Democrat, was their preferred candidate to Bill Mundell, who actually served on the commission in the past as a Republican, was running this year as a Democrat. He lost in the primary as well, and Bank of America saw that as a positive.
As someone who has covered this utility, this company for so long, what does that tell you?
Well, I thought it was striking that they would be so candid with, a Wall Street analyst when they wouldn't answer to Arizonans, or someone who writes for an Arizona audience when we ask them that same question. So that sort of tells you, where their priorities lay. That they would be that much more candid with someone from out of state watching their stock, rather than someone writing for their 1.1 million customers here in the state.
Well, we'll be watching the numbers as campaign finance records are filed at the federal level and the state level. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next episode.